everyone, I'm outside today because the house is full of key workers all doing online meetings and Zoom meetings and things like that, so hopefully it'll be a bit quieter outside in the garden, although I'm not sure about the lighting as the sun's kind of in and out. It may rain at any moment, so the weather is, as always in England, quite exciting and a bit unpredictable, but hopefully it will, the rain will stay away as long as I can do my video. Yesterday we went to Dungeness, no, it was the day before yesterday. We went to Dungeness and Camber Sands. I specifically wanted to go there because I wanted to collect shells. It was somewhere that I'd never been before, but I've had lots of nice comments about the Stitchscapes that I've done with shells, and so much I even had a lady bring some shells to my last Stitchscape that she'd Stitchscape workshop that she'd specifically gone out and collected shells, having seen one that I'd done based around these limpets, and she'd sanded off the tops of all of her limpets as well, which was very prepared of her. But it made me think that perhaps it might be interesting for everyone to see different ways that you can attach the shells to your Stitchscapes. There's obviously a couple of different types of shells here. You've got these lovely ridged ones. This one's perhaps a bit big maybe for what we want to do, but you would stitch over it a little bit like a shisha mirror to attach that down, unless you're lucky enough to find shells that have been bored through. I haven't sanded any of these. These are literally what I picked off the beach and gave them a little clean yesterday. So there's a little creature, I'm not sure what it's called, that goes through and eats the things inside of shells, but it will drill a little hole in it first, which is really handy if you then want to stitch with it, because it's effectively turned that into a sequin for you. So that one's brilliant. And we've even got the tiniest of shells, and apologies, that's the cat who's come to say hello. Hopefully he's not going to jump up on my board again. He's already done that once this morning and slid off the side. So this little tiny one has also got a little hole in it, which is brilliant. We've got these lovely smooth ones, which have actually, I don't know if you can see, got quite a lot of purple in them. So I've kind of gone with a bit of a purple theme in one of the hoops that I'll be showing you today to hopefully match those. And I was hoping to find more of these limpet shells, but we actually only ended up with 3 from Camber Sands. There we go again. Which I will have to put somewhere in. Hopefully I've got some more of those somewhere around. So what we'll do is, if I show you, I'm going to be doing one big hoop, which I've already filled. These are my shell trays. I try to sort of organise them. There we go. Put these in here. I've got a couple of different scales. So there's one that I've already done, which is this one here, which hopefully you'll be able to see. So, and I've included this beautiful purpley fabric, which was lovely. Let's see if I can show you I've arranged some piles of fabrics in sort of sand, sea, sky, plains. Could do anything. But this is really pretty. And apologies for those who haven't ironed, and the sun's out, so you'll see all of the creases. But just taking those little strips with the birds already printed is really lovely. Or if you didn't get a bit with bird in, you can put those in. These look great in sort of just straight stitches or fly stitches, however you want to make them. So that was a really good craft fair find, or fabric fair find. But this is a really big hoop. This is the biggest hoop I've actually attempted in a Stitchscape. This is a 25 centimetre. And in contrast, I'm also, for the smallest of shells, going to try this 10 centimetre one, which I thought would work for the little tiny shells that I've got, and the limpets as well. But I've already done this one because it took a little while to put together. So set that one over there. Let's pop those over here. So what I'll do first is put together this piece here. So what I've got is loads and loads, as always, of different fabrics that I'm going to try and put together. So this is a handful of the sandy pile. So that's quite nice, isn't it? I could use something with that, maybe. And I would definitely like to include my ones with shells in. This is a brilliant find. I'm not sure who the designers of these are. I haven't got the selvage that will tell me. So I definitely want to include some of that. I've even got one with a footprint on, or just one that's the stones. That's quite handy. Popped that one in the big one, so I won't use that one again. So now the sun's come out in all its glory. I'm squinting a little bit. So this is sort of like almost like a wave of sound, if there is such a thing, or a sand dune, or when the sand goes all ripply. You know, if you sort of, we had a little bit of that. The tide was getting up. We went to Canberra, so it started off not being very much sand, and then by the time we left, there was a lot more sand, and it was starting to get into that sort of ripply feel. I think we're going too far down the yellow side of things with that there. Maybe we could do something with that. That's not very yellow. It's not very anything. You only, with this tiny one, you only really want maybe 4 fabrics. No. Maybe the more strawberry coloured one would fit better with my wavy sand. Yeah, that could go. And then what? Have maybe a blue for the sky. This is my sky collection. Put some of the sand away. Let's put you away, so you're a no-go. Someone hanging on, so hopefully. Sorry, chaps. You can get slightly different colours, but some fabulous ones with clouds already on. I looked at that one in my last video. Or this one, which is almost more of a batik cloud. Or you've got like an actual printed cloud. That's rather nice. My much beloved, slightly stolen seagulls. I'll save those. This one that's a bit washy, that's the one I used before. So I think after all of that, I might go with this ombre one. There's just stuff everywhere. Yeah, that'd be nice. Right. I've also brought that you could use, which we could put in, maybe not into this one, maybe into the big one. Things like these, fancy yarns. So this is like a boucle yarn. Well, not really a boucle. Looks like a knit to knit type yarn where they knit it all up and then heat it and then they unknit it so that it keeps its crinkle, a little bit like what you do with your hair. So that's lovely. King Cole Caribbean Calypso double knit. I don't know if any of these are still current. I tend to pick up sort of old end of lines. This is a boucle. Look at that, that's lovely. Little bits of just stuff woven in there. That's a windy icon. Shade 884, but that does look a little bit old and past it. But those might be quite nice, kind of on the bottom of that one maybe. Or you've got Silk Throaster's waist. This is very posh. It's been hanging around a while. Which is just this amazing sort of fine, quite a lot of green in this one. Might have to pick out specific yellows, but imagine that up against the shells, that'd be really nice. Oh, so many things you could do. I've also got some hessian. So you don't have to use the whole bit of hessian, it's like this is a block of hessian. But if you started stripping bits off of it, pulling off bits. It starts to look a little bit raggle-taggle, a bit more beachy maybe. Dungeness is all a bit kind of forgotten and lost and all sorts going on, so that would fit quite nicely with that, really. Okay, so let's quickly go on to... I was hoping the sun wouldn't come out quite so much. As always, if you really love ironing, please look away now, because I don't iron anything. Mainly because by the time you finish stitching, there's so much stuff going on, so much stuff on here. You've kind of ironed out all your creases with your stitches, which is really handy. I leave little bits of calico at the top and the bottom, just because I find it can be easier to pull it into the hoop later. This one I've already laid the calico on, then put the hoop on, then laid all of my fabrics over the top of it, stitched and tacked them all down, and then so that it would be easier for you to see where it was going and the placement, I've then put the hoop back over the top to bring that circle back. But for this one I may not. Usually I do that at the very end so that any creases get ironed out as you sew. Right, what was my next one? This lovely little... So you can see where I've used this before. And the shapes can be quite interesting, so I might just keep that... Oh, now the wind's picking up. Keep that as it is, because that sort of looks sand duney, doesn't it? I buried my scissors. Oh, they've gone. And just do a little straight bit. Across there. And up there. So, that's quite fun. Right then, so my lovely new swirly ripply sand. Let's do the other way. And this is, there's no like set design for this, it's just going for it really. Although there's nothing stopping you, if you wanted more of a specific design, there's nothing stopping you from drawing on the back of these, or drawing on the front of them if you've got like a air dissolvable pen that disappears after 48 hours or what have you. But you can draw it out, you can cut templates for yourself. Something to be a little bit wary of is the direction of a print. So you can obviously, I've cut it so that the waves are going sort of in the same direction, but you want to be slightly careful that you're not doing it that way unless you want it to go that way, so all your waves are going upwards. I quite like the cross purposes of this little bit, but for the shells again, I just said the pattern was going that way. And it looks like I've always thought that pattern's going that way because that's how I've always cut it. So, and again, I'm going to keep that, I think. I tend to try and cut around the shells. Where I can. Oh, there's a postman. All goes on, it's like a bustling country lifestyle. We'll have the train going in a minute, as we're not far from the town. Okay, oh that's rather nice, isn't it? We've got perhaps a little bit too much sky now. Let's move you up. I just wanted a flash of blue. And because this is on the bottom, I want to just wiggle cut the bottom as well. So that's quite nice because that then leaves me room to put in my shells amongst these printed shells. Well, you could have some sort of wispy situation happening there. So if I just quickly set this down, then I get on to talking about the shells themselves. So I always start, depending how I've layered them, and these are sort of a traditional layering, so with the top piece going down first and then it all coming towards you, getting closer to you, so therefore you've layered it on top of it, with the shells being the most prominent and therefore closest to you as you look at the piece. So to tack these down, these tacking stitches come out at the end, they're not forever, so they don't need to be beautifully neat. I tend to do mine in white, but I don't know why really. I think it's because if you use a coloured sewing cotton, although it might make it easier to see at the end when you're pulling it all out, it might not help your actual colours, so it might sort of, looking at it, you go, oh my god, there's a pink spot there, whereas actually that's just your tacking stitch, but it could help ruin your stitch choices or make your stitch choices a bit harder. So calico on this is a bit baggy actually. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to smooth down with either finger or thumb the layer that I'm tacking down and also the layer above it, because as you're stitching this way from the bottom up, you're tacking the layer above, or even a couple of layers above, depending how much overlap you've given each time. So with this swirly one, and I tend to put my sort of whole hand over, and with the bigger one I actually slid it off the edge of the board so that half of it was on and half of it was off, so that I could then sort of keep a hand on it, because having spent ages arranging everything, if you're not gluing it down, you might dislodge your fabrics. I think I can get a lovely tan at the end of this, or a very red nose, probably very red nose. Okay, so this piece I'm going to be a little bit careful with because it's so squinchy. I might even, before I commit myself, put just a little bit more of a dip in there. It's because I like to see the juxtaposition between the printed fabrics and the calico. I always use calico, it's sort of a hidden part of it, but the calico's there for a reason. It's there to help support the other fabrics and provide a stable backing so that I can, well, do this over the top of it. So it seems a shame that it never gets its turn in the limelight, so I always try and leave bits of it top and bottom, A, to help with the framing and the hoop if it is staying in the hoop, but also because it's something that's been used, so I sort of feel a bit sorry for it, keep covering it up all the time. But that's completely personal preference. If you don't want to see any of the calico, that's fine. You just need to make sure that you allow, same way as you've allowed additional inch or so either side of the hoop, you need to allow exactly the same at the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull and drag this up. So pull it, drag with the needle to just help smooth it a little bit more. When I come to stitch this piece, I would start stitching, probably seed stitch or a running stitch, start stitching from this side and work my way up so those creases get pushed out at the top. Okay, so that's that all tacked down. I'll leave the little strips of hessian for now. So I'm just tying this off. It doesn't have to be fancy, it's just literally got to hold things down. So actually I will want to put this on now, won't I? Otherwise my shells won't have anywhere to go. Right, so these are quite skinny little pieces of hessian. They're all different lengths. I don't really want to, sort of want to twist it, but not really. Maybe a little bit more. What did I do with that? There it is. So I don't know where this, I think this came from a flower arrangement or something. You can get them from greengrocers, or you can even buy it. The craft shops sell this hessian stuff because they're quite good for making sort of bags out of, to keep your potatoes in. Just I think what they were originally for. Right, oh, this is all looking very seasidey. Okay, so you could even in some places tease this apart, maybe. Let's have a go. That was tricky. But, oh, there you go, look, super fluff. There's nothing, you don't have to take anything at face value. If you've got sort of trimmings or bits of yarn, try untangling them, unravelling them, untwisting them, whatever, what happens. You've got laces or ribbons, you don't have to keep them as laces or ribbons. Or you don't have to keep them on their own. What if you stitched into them, like just them? What would happen? It's just about playing. Using what you've got and playing with it. Right, just put my fluffy bit on the top. Lovely. Oh, that really mirrors what's going on underneath on that layer. Okay, so I've brought out a jumble of stuff. You got anything? That looks good. Yeah, let's use that. This is, I've just finished a piece with a little house on it. It's sort of vaguely vintagey. So now I've lost my needle. Well, that's an excellent start. Let's try another one. I'm always losing needles. I don't want to worry anyone I live with, but there could be needles everywhere. That's annoying as well, because I liked that needle. I would probably hunt for it later. Right, new needle. If I watch this video back, you can probably see what happened to the needle actually. Something to do later. Let's see if we can see anything at all, because obviously now it's sunny. The board's quite shiny. It's all going swimmingly well. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the corner, right at the top here, net as close to the hoop as you can get, not actually in that fabric, but just off, on coming up in this fabric to go down and over under this one. We just want to do sort of one couching stitch that just encompasses all of that hessian madness. And then what I'm also going to do is come up and sort of do a half one, so kind of up in the same place, and a little half one there, just to help hold that. And then the rest of these I might just go and sort of randomly stitch different clumps of them so that they keep their wild ways. Just got to make sure we get all of it eventually. And the catching stitches you want to be quite small, almost coming up and going down in the same point. I need to bring this up a bit. This little one's taken off on his own. fine. You can stay where you are. Turning the work as I go round. Clumped a bit together now. And I think you could probably overstitch this, but try not to overthink it too much. Because you are then going to put, or I am then going to put more over this, so it may get trapped down by a shell or some other stitches, and if it doesn't, then we just go over it at the end, catch it and secure it back down. Right, how are we doing? We got most of it? No. Missed that one completely. Let's do a little splodge there. And there's a little one that's shorter than the others. Let's catch him. There we go. Right, now have we got everybody? No. Let's do one there. I'll leave that for now, I think. Right, so let's move on to putting in some shells. I wanted to do a smaller one because I picked up some really diddy little limpets. Unfortunately, one of the limpets is actually broken. Looks like it was part of a bigger limpet, but we're going to use it anyway. Maybe tuck him underneath a bit of straw. And I also found these really sweet little tiny shells, which sort of match the ones that are on here already. So I wanted to use those. Then I put away the ones that had holes in. So that one would be quite good. So we need a little one for the middle. Maybe him. There's something whooping. I'm not quite sure what it is that's whooping out here. So that's what it looked like it's going. There were some more really tiny shells. I don't know what I've done with them. And I thought I'd been so clever and stacked them all so neatly. So they're still a bit wet from where I washed them. Oh, there's one. I found two sets of these super tiny shells. There we go. So in between those I can put fancy yarns, French knots, beads, other bits of hessium, whatever I've got. This is what I've used on my previous sort of beachy shell themed ones, which is Stylecraft Moonbeam, shade 3961 Luminary Line. Isn't that lovely? Because it's got like a matte side and a shiny side. It sort of alternates between the two. But you can tease this out because it's like a knitted tube. So you can tease it out, which is just fantastic because then it kind of looks very seaweedy, can cover up all sorts of things. So we could do bits of that. I've got bits of leatherette cord in the box, which isn't going to come out. So that could sort of swirl around in some sort of way. There's literally, it's limitless, whatever you want to do. So, whilst these are placed, usually I'd take a photograph at this point, but you are on my camera, so I cannot. But here's my thread. So you kind of want to choose, I might do a lighter one actually. For these ones we're going to go over them a bit like shisha mirrors. And I might too grey. That's a better match. If you can match it, you could just use the sort of Coats Gutermann sewing cotton, but I like to distinguish from my tacking stitches, so I will try and use, if I can find my way in. I don't know if I wrapped this. And if you use something that kind of matches the colour. Okay, so and the idea is that this stitching isn't so much of it that you lose the shell, but is enough to tack it. So you want to come up, I tend to come up at sort of the pointy rounded nose bit and go across it almost past the middle, and then come up again, because this is one that hasn't got a hole in. If it's got a hole in we can do it slightly differently, but it hasn't. So basically you've just given that shell braces by those things, and you're going to work your way around, so you're sort of making like a saddle, I guess, shell saddle, or a papoose, shell papoose, that it can sit in. Didn't do that one very well. Let's do that one again. And I like to keep them fairly even if possible. You could do a different colour for every single shell, because obviously this one's a bit orangey. I'll do something a bit orangey, depends on their shape. That's a bit better. You don't need to go wild with this. Maybe 3 or, oh no, wrong way around. 3 or 4 stitches round. Let's do another one. Across that way, it doesn't seem quite even, this shell. But then if you come up at the bottom, almost opposite the nose, and you're coming up right underneath this shell, use the grooves in the shell to pick up all of those threads that you just did, and go back down almost in the same spot. So it's still kind of casting the web that you've made for it, but it's not, because you've then pulled them down, it's not part of the shell. It looks almost like they're caught in a fisherman's net more than anything. So, and then I'm just going to go straight over to this teeny weeny little guy here and do exactly the same thing, because he doesn't have a hole in him either. I might have to move my other shells off in a minute, so I can turn this upside down and knot the threads. This is this little limpet guy, just keeps bouncing in. On this side. and come up opposite the nose end. Use the grooves, grab all the stitches, pull it down. And I'd make sure when you're doing this that your fabric's still nice and tight, if possible. So if these two feel quite secure, what I'm going to do, I think, is lay these how I want them. So over here, over there, maybe on the 90. Yeah, it's got loads of threads going on at the back here that really need tying off. Oops. So start with the shell one, so you don't want the shells falling off. And I do always knot my thread, and I think if you're stitching on shells or beads or sequins, things that you really need to stay on, you really should put a good strong knot in that. A lot of people just kind of go around a bit of calico twice and then that's their knot, but if you go through the loop that you've created just before you fully commit yourself and tie that off, then there's at least a knot to be worked through first. Okay. So, and that was only a single strand of this thread. So the next one I'm going to do, just put you there for reference, is this lovely limpet. So you were tucked up underneath there, weren't you? So again with a single strand, this one's the same colour I've just done the hessian with, because it sort of matches. In their grand overall scheme of things, these threads just get lost, so that's not... Right, and this one's got a hole in it, so we can instead treat this a little bit more like a sequin. I'm going to come up on that outside, go through the hole in the middle that looks like rocks have maybe created, and actually angle my needle so I'm almost at the same point inside. So you don't want to go kind of up and then straight down the middle. You want to angle the needle so that you're almost at that same point. You just kind of work your way around, so you don't want hundreds and hundreds of stitches, but maybe 5 or 6 would be a good number. Depends on the size of your limpet or your shell if you haven't got a limpet. Okay, last one. And what I'm going to do is just, whilst we're here, tack this fluffy bit of hessian down to keep him next to the shell. So that's that one, all securely on. Lovely jubbly. So, do I want to use that for this one? Yeah, I suppose so. Now this one's got our lovely little bored hole into it, and they're beautiful holes. So honestly, done by a professional. And what I might do is almost try a combination of the 2 stitches. So, and this one you probably would want to go straight down in. So put a couple of your sort of bracing around the nose kind of stitches. And then maybe one up the middle. Yeah, that could work. So what we could do, if you don't like that, we can cover that with other threads or bits of green or something to make it look like it's just buried underneath something rather than being stitched down like a sequin. So this one's also a kind of similar colour. Was he there? Can't remember now. No, I think it was further round. Maybe down the bottom. Right, so this one we're going to have to do our crossing over Shishimura one. I haven't got enough thread on this, so hang on a moment, I'll come back to you. The other thing is when you're tying things off, if you've got really delicate shells, try not to push down too hard because you don't want to squash them. Once you've stitched them on, I've done that before with a limpet. Stitched it on and then I was tying it off at the back and I'd obviously pushed it too hard and it cracked the top of it. So I had to go back over and re-stitch it because then all my threads were too baggy. Right, so I think it was that way. So you're coming up, kind of to the middle, a little bit over. And I don't know if this is a specific way of doing shells, but this is just how I've kind of developed. Same side, a little bit over. They don't have to be even each side. Come up again, move further round. And on this side. Although it does help if you can kind of work side by side, otherwise you end up sort of pushing the shell away. And right on the edge there. Lovely. And then right in the bottom, in the middle, between those two first stitches, come up, down through those threads, and oh, I've gone straight into the hoop. There we go. Just pull them down a bit, just to keep that nice and secure. Okay, I've got another limpet that came in here, I think. So we can do this in a limpety way. So you come up anywhere, angle your needle so that it goes down. Whoops. Don't want to move them. And work your way around. So he's got quite, well, this shell's got quite obvious ridges. So it looks like he was only a little limpet. Down. And ooh, do I do another one? How secure is he? I might do another one. And the reason I go down the side is because often I fill these with other stitches, so you can pad it out. You put little bits of felt in to hide it, or pad out to put French knots over the top. Also, you don't have to stitch so far down. Oh, been visited. Relax my scissors. I'm about to use those. Thank you. Okay, so all guns blazing now. Right, let's move back to the creamy colour. So we just want one strand. As before, when de-stranding, 6 strands, if you keep it in a Y shape, it makes it much easier, so nothing's getting tangled. So this one, I don't know if I'm going to get my needle through this really tiny little hole. No, I'm not. Have I got a beading needle with me? Oh, I do. Got to be a little bit careful that the holes that you're going through will actually fit your needle. Yes, yes I can. Right, okay, let's swap out normal needle. Let's not lose this one. For a beading needle. Right, so you were facing your little pal here. Okay. So this one coming up through the nose parts, either side, through the hole, and then I'm going to do one up the middle. Oops, just pushed it away. There we go. So these are stitched on as well. And then switch back to my normal needle because these two have also got holes. Whoops. But the hole's much bigger. I prefer a sturdy needle when possible. Okay, so I don't remember how we had these. Not really, let's go for that. So this hole is slightly off centre, but we might still be able to do the same thing. So come up either side of the nose. I'm going to try and angle my stitches in this one as well, just because it's a higher dome. And it's roughly the middle, about there. Maybe angle that down there. There we go. And then last one. And just want to go up and down either side of the nose. And up the middle. It possibly looks better, this one, if you've got a grooved shell. They're all on there, nothing's coming off. I hope if I can. Give it an extra secure knot, right. So, there we have it. So those are our initial shells. As I said, we might add a little bit of this. I do like this. What I like about this one is you've either got this sort of slinky shiny one for the wet look, or you've got this matte, more cotton one, which actually pulls out better. But you could push him down there. Let's see. That's a bit yellow. That's a better one. You sort of hide the ends, which would be really nice. And you can throw on whatever you've got. If you want to give it kind of the effect of little water droplets still on the shells, sort of use either a shiny thread to do maybe French knots, bullion knots, colonial knots. You could use white beads, clear beads. If you want more stones, you could use matte. I've got some really nice sort of matte beigey beads, beigey brown, slightly purple. And this works better if you've got limpets with bigger holes. So you could always sand them down further if they're not holy enough for you. Because this is knitted, I'm going to grab that through the middle, push it into my limpet. And again, just to secure it. And then at the bottom of the shell, just grab an edge of this yarn. You could even, I suppose, make this yarn yourself. If you had a really, really fine thread, cotton thread, and did some French tube knitting, you could make something similar. And I'm just kind of coming up around it and grabbing little edges of it so that it's pulling it out and stretching it, so it's sort of giving it an oozy sort of a feel. And then where I said we wanted to hide the cross thread on this shell, because it's sort of more at odds where it's slightly more patterned, I'm just going to go around it. And where this has got quite an open hole, we could also have a go pushing that up there. Oh, that's rather lovely. Okay, so you can kind of see how it's going to build up. So if you put your shells down first, you can then add things to them and bed them in and sort of trap them, go round them all in boolean knots, French knots. I've got bits of this lovely wool. I think it's proper woolen wool actually, it feels like it. Where if you've got shells that are more open, you could put that underneath and pad it. So if I show you on the bigger one, so we'll leave that little one for now. And I'll just go on and demonstrate some more on the big one. What a mess, honestly. I'm such a mucky pup. So, because I'm doing a big one, because on Dungeness the shells were much larger and darker in colour, and on Canvas Sands they were sort of the same kind of shell, like these shells and these shells, but they're much lighter and they were smaller. So I thought, oh, a couple of shell sizes, hoop sizes might actually hold up to the shells. So this one's obviously broken, but I could use that more as a sequin. That one's also broken. And I'm not sure whether this size is too big or not, if you know what I mean. Because I haven't done shells that are this big. There's also broken bits of shell, which could work, because you could use that as like little caves, put stitches inside it. It'd be quite fun, wouldn't it? Okay, well maybe those two, but perhaps not that one. That's a bit big. Maybe I'll go back to my Canvas Sands shells. And this one was just beautiful. It's the only one I found. It's got this amazing purpleness in it, which I thought might go well with this. And I've done this as kind of white seahorses, so I'm hoping to put in kind of white bead, glittery bits. That's got a hole in, that's handy. There are actually, on this beach, quite a lot with holes in, which is just super handy. I've also got these really long purpley ones, which, as I said before, would go really well, because I've got purple up here, then I've balanced it with this batik, which has got a bit of purple down here, and the blue up here is balancing this bit down here. But if I can balance it down here with a bit more purple, that would be really handy. Some of them are more purpley than others. It's amazing the colours that you get inside shells, and just generally. Let's break them right. shells underneath shells. Need some more of these little ones. Another tiny one. Another one. I don't want to go too mad with the shells. Right, let's leave it there. So what I was meaning with the felt on this one is you can, oh, what is this? Kind of initially cut around the shell. So we know the sort of size we're dealing with. Maybe go a bit smaller. The idea is that you'd stitch your shell down like we did with the limpets, and then through the hole, you've imagined I've stitched this down, stuff your bit of felt, wadding, interlining, stacks of tissue paper, and you can keep building that up, so just keep cutting little circles. You can build up some areas more than others. In you pop. Push it down so that when you come to stitch it, if you're filling it of course with sort of French knots and other things, you don't have to stitch so low down, and you can fill it, and it can actually be like a profusion, so you could have it coming, all the felt coming right up, so you're actually stitching through loads and loads of layers. And then you only have to do a few French knots on the top in the hole, rather than hundreds and hundreds of French knots. So you just keep building that up, and you can even do that, and where I've got this broken one, you could stuff that with the green maybe, and do things like that. So I'm going to carry on stitching these, and I'll be able to put photo updates, but basically the long and the short of it is that's how you stitch on your shells. So if you've got any questions, please do pop me a message down below. I'd love to see if you're you do attempt to stitch on shells onto your Stitchscapes, and do please join my Dotty Textiles Stitchscape group on Facebook, which is linked to my Facebook page. You can request to join. There are a couple of questions to answer about whether or not you've been inspired to stitch. I assume that at this point, if you're trying to join my group, everyone's been inspired to make a Stitchscape, but you might just want to follow along with what others are doing. So if you've got any questions, do contact me, and I'll do my best to answer them. Have a good day.